In our third lesson for Japanese, we start talking about the pitch accent. So, first, what is Japanese pitch accent? Very short, the pitch accent is a lexical use of relative pitch, high versus low, to distinguish words or mark prosodic shape. In Japanese, the single most important event, linguistically speaking, is a downstep, which is a sharp fall in pitch that usually occurs after an accented motor. Where that fall happens is part of the word's identity. This is not the same as stress, for example in a stress language like English, because stress changes loudness, duration and vowel quality. Japanese changes pitch on moraic units. Also, note that once the pitch drops, it does not go up again, and the first and second morai are never the same pitch. The result is that if a word starts high, the rest is low. If a word starts low, then it rises in a second motor, which is the only time the pitch actually rises. And at some point, it falls again. Now, real quick, what is a motor? You see, a motor is the timing unit Japanese uses. Here we are using the symbol mu. So we have a short vowel, and that is one motor, for example, ka. When we have a long vowel, that would be two morai, for example, o. Then we have something called sokuon. As you can see, that is the small tsu, that basically doubles the consonant right after. And we have the moraic nasal, which is n. Each of those count as one motor. And then we have something called yon, also counting as one motor. For example, kya, kyu, kyo. And important here, note the small versions of ya, you, and yo. They all count as one motor. So, count morai, not syllables, when you locate the accent, because a motor is slightly different than a syllable. With that out of the way, we are already coming to the last part of this rather short lesson. The four basic Tokyo type pitch patterns: name, contour, and what happens when a particle, for example ga or ni, is attached. I will show each pattern as isolated word and with particle, and we will use L for low and H for high, as well as the arrow down to symbolize the downstep, just a visual representation. Now, the reason why we are using the Tokyo type is because the Tokyo dialect is normally the one you're learning when learning Japanese, as it is the standard dialect, and you should be understood across Japan with this dialect if you speak it properly, that is. So, for an easy understanding, a high pitch is like the tone you have when you're asking a question, so your voice is rising. A low pitch is like a statement with an exclamation mark, a fall in your voice. This is of course just an oversimplification, but should give you something to orientate yourself. Other than this, as a linguist, I can say watching a lot of anime would be something I suggest, if it actually would be that easy. But anime Japanese is not proper Japanese, as it uses stylistic differences for characterizations, as well as having different dialects. But what does help, and why I still say anime is fantastic, also for language learning, you get a lot of input, and once you have a good base understanding, you can just enjoy it much more. First we have the heiban, which means flat or accentless. Now, the contour with the word alone, we're starting low and then high. We have a rise early on and then it stays high. With the particle remains high because there is no drop after the word, and since we started low, we are not falling again. So, we have no internal downstep inside the word. The particle stays high, so the whole phonological word keeps a high plateau. Next we have atamadaka, which means head high, and the accent is on the first molar. So, the contour, the word alone, we have high and then low. So high on the first molar and an immediate fall. And remember, once it's down, it does not go up again. Even with the particle is low. The drop already occurred inside the words. So the fall comes right after the first molar. Thus, the word sounds high, then low. And next we have nakadaka, which means middle high. So the accent is somewhere in the middle, which means not at the beginning, but not at the end. So we are starting low, then we are going high, and somewhere in the middle, not at the end, it is low again. So we have a rise to the peak on a middle molar, then drop after that molar. With the particle is low, because drop has already happened somewhere inside the words. So the peak is internal, not first and not last. And the drop follows the accented molar and stays low to the end. And lastly the odaka, which means tail high, and the accent is on the final molar. So now the contour word alone. Like heaven, we're starting low and then we're having high all the way till the end. So it looks like heaven when spoken alone, with the final molar being high. Yet with particle, the drop occurs on the particle, which means the particle becomes low, which is the difference between heaven and odaka, and the reason why I even included the particles here in the first place. So the downstep is after the last molar, so the accent only becomes audible when a particle follows.